Rough news in the markets today, with the S&P TSX falling over 10%, making a month loss of over 18%, and over the past year, they've almost had a 10% loss in the markets. This isn't good news for Canada and the world as a whole, as stocks continue to struggle and may signal a coming recession. Overall, though, it's hard to say what's going to happen. Stocks might rebound, but I wouldn't count on it because we don't know what's going to happen with coronavirus going forward. So I'd be cautious if you're looking to buy the bottom, as it's hard to say. If you have confidence that things will go up, you might be able to get some great returns, but volatility right now is makes it quite hard to speculate. Overall, the big drop in the Canadian market comes from the energy industry, with the S&P TSX capped energy index falling a staggering 27%. This is off the back of oil prices, but I'll talk about that later. The S&P 500 dropped a total of 7.6% on the day, making a month loss of 17.5%. Overall, in the past year, the S&P 500 is actually down 1.3%, which is not showing a good sign for the markets. It's hard to say where the markets are going to go from here. There might be a slight rebound or something tomorrow, but I'd caution trying to think that this is the bottom necessarily right now, just because there still is so much going on in the oil market, especially with what's going on with the coronavirus. It's hard to say how much impact that will have. We don't yet know how well it's going to affect the future. In terms of sectors, the big loss comes from the energy sector with a loss of over 18%. The second loss is the financials with just over 10%. And then third, industrials at about 9%. The least losers of the week, can't really say they're winners, is the consumer staples at 3.7% drop. The Dow fell 7.8% today, making a week loss of 10.7% and a month loss of 18%. The big news, though, is looking at year mark. Over the past year, the Dow has fallen 7%. So if you've held on to the Dow for the past year, just from this past month, you've lost 7% return. The Nasdaq dropped 7.3% on the day, making a week loss of over 11% and a month loss of about 16.5%. There's more red in the markets, with the FTSE dropping 7.7% on the day, making it a week loss of 11.67%. The Nikkei also had a big drop, falling over 5%, making it over 9% loss on the 5-day mark. The big news for the day, though, is the staggering drop in oil. WTI dropped down to $31 a barrel, making about a 25% drop. That's about a 35% drop in the past 5 days. Brent crude dropped about 24%, and over the past 5 days, it dropped 34%. The main reason for this is that Saudi Arabia is cutting down their oil prices. This has a lot to do with the meeting that went on last week. So if you didn't hear about it, OPEC Plus wanted to limit the production. They wanted to cut production by 1.5 million barrels to try and increase the price. It didn't go through, largely in part because Russia didn't agree to it, as they want to continue to expand their production and make investments. Saudi Arabia didn't take too kindly this, and so now they're offering their oil at a cheaper price, and it's drastically affecting oil prices. There's some slight green in the market, with gold going up 11 basis points. While that doesn't seem like much, if you compare it to most other things in the market, that is actually decent not only gain, but safe haven for assets that could have lost the significant amounts like the S&P TSX, the FTSE, the S&P 500. Interest rates continue to tumble, with the Canada and US 10-year Treasury yields dropping down to that 50 basis point marks. That's about a 24 basis point drop since last Friday. Overall, most of the rates continue to drop. You've got the 1-year US down at 31 basis points. You got the 5-year Canada down at 50 basis points as well. Even the 30-year Canada's dropped down to 68 basis points. It's hard to say where these rates are going, but you can see that a lot of the money from the stock market is flooding into these treasuries. Hard to say how far it's going to go. It puts the question in, will we get negative rates in North America? Personally, I've never quite understood negative rates. It doesn't really make sense to me why you'd ever invest in negative rates unless maybe you had deflation, but we don't have deflation, so it just doesn't really seem like a better investment than holding cash overall. In the currency markets, the Japanese yen and the euro continue to perform strongly. Just looking at the Japanese yen, it's up over 4% versus the Canadian dollar, about 3% versus the USD. Pretty significant day. The British pound had a decent day. On the downside, though, the losers were the Australian dollar and the Canadian dollar. The Canadian dollar is pretty expected with the loss, as a lot of its price is tied to the oil prices, as a big portion of Canada's revenue comes from the oil sands. Overall, that's not looking too good for the Canadian currency. It's down at that 73% mark compared to the US dollar. With everything going on in the markets and around the world, there seems to be a serious threat that a recession will happen in Europe. The coronavirus, as well as oil prices, are having a significant effect on stocks, and they could have an effect on GDP going forward, as the euro area might have its first recession in 3 years. The central bank there it actually expects only 0.1% growth this quarter, which is down from their previous expectation of 0.3%. Germany also plans to spend an additional 14.1 billion between 2021 and 2024 to combat the effects. I'm not quite sure. A lot of governments are planning these spending sprees to combat the effects of the virus. I'm not quite sure how it'll end up working in the long run. It seems a little strange to me that you're going to put billions of dollars in to try and combat a stock market that's fallen significantly and reduced the economic value of all stocks around the world by over $1 trillion. Seems like it's not really going to quite add up, but I guess we'll have to see. They kind of also have to show that they're doing something, so that might have something to do with it. Morgan Stanley cut its 2020 growth projections for the euro area. They're just expecting a 0.4%, which is down from their 0.9%. Nomura is also expecting only a 0.4% growth in that area as well. Though at Berenberg, they're actually expecting a recession much worse. They expect a slump of 0.4% this quarter as well as the next. So don't really expect too much progress this year. In some, there are also their predictions. They expect a negative growth of 1.2% in Italy this year, and they also expect Germany will contract by 0.4%. It'll be interesting to see what's going on forward. Maybe there could possibly be some rebounds, as there has been some decent economic numbers that have come out around the world previously, but it'll have to wait and see until the new ones come out regarding what's currently going on. The coronavirus continues to make headlines as the total amount of cases reaches 114,000, with over 4,000 deaths. The biggest news, though, is the effect it's having on Italy. They've officially quarantined about 16 million people in northern Italy to try and combat the spread of the virus. As you can see in Italy, their new cases were about 1,800, which is pretty significant. They're at a total of 9,000, and they have total deaths of 463. So hopefully they are able to do well going forward. The quarantine will work out. On the plus side, though, South Korea doesn't seem to be expanding as fast as it used to, and seems to be not quite adding cases as quickly. China also, their new cases is down to only 44, which is kind of some good news. But at the same time, I'm always a little worried about China. I don't quite trust what comes out of China because the Communist Party there kind of wants you to know what they want you to know, and that's what they'll put out there. So hard to say, but it's starting to spread a decent amount, especially with Germany, Spain, and France all going over that 1,000 point case marks. It doesn't seem like it's gonna stop anytime soon, and it's just gonna have to hold in there and wait for it to pass. Also, the first death in Canada happened today. Um, Sorry to hear that. There's a total of 77 people infected in Canada. In company news, Edison Energy Services, the Canadian energy company, has reported their Q4 earnings. It was a really rough quarter for them, which is going to hurt them even more if you consider how much oil has just dropped today alone. Their net income was a loss of 71.6 million, which is down from their profit last year of 154.8 million. The earnings per share were negative 44 cents compared to last year's 98 cents profit. Revenue, though, was up to 375.8 million, up from 346 million the previous year. Over the year, they had a total loss of $1.02 a share, compared to the previous year of 30 cents a share. This isn't boding too well for the company, especially since they have done some acquisitions in the past year. So they'd like to see some profits going forward, especially if you consider where oil's been going down to that $32 mark. It's really not looking good for the Canadian oil sands sector, so it's hard to see them doing too well. Just to show you how markets are reacting to their earnings reports, they are down a total of about 46%. I don't know when the last time I've seen a company have just stock tank in one day. I will inform you though, currently stocks are trading down about 9.4% in Canada, so that partly has to do with it, as well as the decrease overall in the energy market to do with oil. But this is really not a good day for this company. There was a bit of Boeing news today. As you know, the 737 MAX has been off. They haven't been using this jet, and it's really hurting the company going forward as some crashed and that they basically need to fix what's going on with the plane. So they recently made a proposal to leave the wiring bundles in place on the grounded 737 MAX, but they weren't able to get approval for this, which ended up pushing their stock down about 12% in the morning. That is about 5% lower than the market opens in the morning. So overall, not too good news for them, but hopefully they can figure out what to do with their plane going forward. If there's any Bitcoin enthusiasts out there, should probably be pretty interesting to see what's going on with Bitcoin right now. As you can see, it's dropped over 3% on the day. And in the past month, since what's been going on, it used to be at 13,390 Canadian dollars, and now it's down to 10,668, which is a pretty significant drop, especially when you consider what Bitcoin is supposed to be. A lot of people consider it a similarity to gold or type of currency, but the way it's been performing when the stocks are going down is just not quite working like that. It doesn't really seem like a hedge. It seems to be moving with the markets. So overall, it seems like a strange investment, as I always quite expected. Not too sure what people were expecting to happen or even hoping to happen in this situation.